now because we have a few students who wanted to learn more about RAships but weren't able to make it to this meeting at this specific time. I'm really excited to hear from our panelists today. I'm going to briefly introduce them. They're going to talk about their experiences either working with RAs or their experiences of being an RA. And then we'll have some time for questions. And then to close out our panel, what we've done is we've reached out to the graduate students who currently need RAs for next quarter. And we've asked them to give us a little bit of details of what they need RAships for, what are the research projects that they'll be working on. And so we'll introduce those and give you the contact information of those grad students kind of for the next step. If you've been learning about RAships, you want to take advantage of these opportunities, here are some opportunities that we'll be explaining to you. So first I want to introduce our first panelist is Dr. Jennifer Gibbs. She is an OrComm rock star. She's been with our department for a few years and she's been doing some really interesting work with research assistants, I think on a variety of different projects. And she also oversees our honors program, which is a really great way for students if you kind of get hooked on the research bug in an RAship and you want to take it to the next level, you have some more autonomy and control to do a more in-depth study in the honors program. Our second panelist is Nancy Molina Rogers. She is a MediaComm rock star, and she does a lot of really great media research looking at underrepresented populations in media and learning more about the factors involved in that as well as the effects. And then we have two undergraduate panelists. First undergraduate panelist is Alyssa Velasquez, and she works with Monica Cornejo, looking at working specifically with undocumented populations and specifically undocumented students. And our last panelist is Anna Ingle, and she works with Chantel Honton, looking at both Latinx and Black communities. One of the things that I'm hoping that you guys are picking up on throughout this panel is just how passionate our department is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that starts both in the classroom, how we treat each other in the department, as well as what types of research that we do and what that research accomplishes for marginalized communities. And so I'm really excited to hear from our panelists. We're going to start with Jen, then we'll go Nancy, then Alyssa, then Anna. But Jen, you can kick us off if you're ready.
Sure, I'll start us off. Thanks, Gavin, for organizing this panel. It's a great idea, and well, all of you. It's great to see so many people on the call. So I would just talk a little bit about how I use my work, as well as benefits you may get from being an RA, and what we look for in RAs. And as Gavin mentioned, I'm also the one of the directors of the honors program. So I'm working with like 7 comm honors students right now who are doing an honors thesis. So I can also a little bit about that if you want a more in-depth research. I'll start off and most of my comments will be about being an RA. So I'll just, why do we need RAs? Why should you RA? All of the professors and grad students that are in the department are researchers, actively involved in programs. We're doing all different research. There's different topics. Everyone kind of specializes in a certain area, but we're all actively involved in research, and we need help with our research. Research is complex. It involves a lot of steps. It's there's a lot that goes into it. So we often work in teams. You can accomplish a lot more. A group is, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So we get to work with people, and that's both faculty and grad students, but also we like to involve undergrad students in our research. And this is both helpful for us. You can do a lot of tasks that help us research done and facilitate our research, but it's also beneficial for you. I think you can, being a and getting involved in research can be a really, oh, sorry if I'm breaking up a little bit. Hope my internet is okay, but can you all hear me? Okay. But being involved in research is also a really rewarding experience for you as well. And so, the types of tasks that you might do as an RA really range from administrative tasks. We have a on to keep track of data. There's Excel files or lists of things that we have to keep track of if we're collecting data and interviewing people or surveying people. So there may be some administrative tasks that you would help with, everything from keeping databases, photocopying, just keeping things, to more substantial involvement in the research process. So we might ask you to help us find literature, find articles. A lot of the tasks, I think, are often related to analysis. And so we might ask you to help us code data. We might ask you to help analyze data. There may be ways that you are helping to write up data into a report or make charts or graphs. I think you all bring a lot of specials that could be really helpful. Maybe you're good at graph design, or maybe you're just really detail oriented. Maybe you might have some experience that adds to the research. You might have some ideas that. So usually the experience is somewhat structured. Like we try to give you kind of discrete and direction. So I think getting involved as an good opportunity to kind of get your feet wet in the research process, and be supervised by an instructor. You're supporting, a research project that a faculty member or a grad student has going on, and you're learning about the research process. It could be everything from designing the research, reviewing literature, collecting data, analyzing data, et cetera. So it can be a lot of and that's really beneficial for you to learn about research. I think other benefits that it gives you are you get to work more closely in a smaller research team. A lot of the classes that we have here in the comm department are very large. They're like 80, 90 students. The pre-comm classes are even larger than that. And it's easy to feel like you're just a number. You're just one of, hundreds of students. If you work as an RA, you're actually working directly with a faculty member or a grad student. You develop a closer relationship. It might be helpful if you want to get a letter of recommendation for grad. It helps us get to know you more on a more personal level. And that's something you don't always get in your classes. If you do decide that you love research, may want to go on and do your own independent research project. There's actually also so COM 199R is process. There's also a COM 199, which is if you have an idea for a research project and you have a faculty member or grad student supervising you. I've also worked with some of those where the student actually initiated an idea and I supervise them and we work together kind of collaboratively, and they more their own idea and their own project. So that's also an option. But if you want to get more involved, you can do an honors thesis where you're actually designing your own original research, conceptualizing it, you're coming up with your research question, you're developing it from finish, you're, collecting data, analyzing data, et cetera. So that's a whole program that we have. It's 180. It's actually 180, 181A, 181B. So that you would do for a full year under the supervision faculty member. So I also wanted to give you a little bit more specific examples of like what I've had RAs do before. So I said there's lots of different types of projects and involvement, but I have one project that I've involved RAs in it's analyzing data from a message board community, a message So this is a message forum that I'm actually a member of, and it's been around for like 20 years. But I'm looking at this concept called assertive control, and this is like a theoretical concept from OrgComm. It kind of means like peer pressure, so when you have a group that doesn't have a formal leader, it's a self-organizing group, there's not formal control where the supervisor is telling you to do something. It's more concerted control. People are working in concert together, and members are creating the rules and norms, and then enforcing these rules and norms and disciplining each other. So this was a concept that I took from OrgComm, and I'm analyzing online communities to see if concerted control also develops in these types of online environments. And so I've had a number of RAs work with me in both an inductive and a deductive way. So inductively, sorry if my internet connection's unstable, but we analyzed a bunch of posts from the message forum. So I had my RAs just do to save posts as PDF, and some of these posts are like 300 pages long, so they had to kind of compile each post into one PDF. There may be more sophisticated ways of analyzing and working with online data, but for the purposes of this community, that was all we were able to do. So they helped me get the data and get it into Fs that we could then analyze. I had helped me inductively where read through posts, and we were coming up with a new coding frame. So we came up with the categories, got their input. We would have discussions every week. There was a team of 4 or 5 of us. So they helped generate these categories. So they really had input into the research process. And then once we had these categories, we then went through a deductive phase where we were looking at data and coding it into these categories. And so then at that point, we had an Excel where we would code, 4 categories or something, and they would code them, and we would have multiple coders so that we could show that there was reliability, that people same codes. And that's just one example of a project that I've done, but I think it was really interesting and for people to work with real world data and actually connect it to theory. So it's like, you have these high level theoretical concepts. How do you see them in actual data? People's posts on a message forum, but we were really working back and forth. And I think it helped them kind of understand, how researchers connect theory to data and use to build new theory. So I think that's most of what I wanted to say, but I'm happy to elaborate more in the Q&A portion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. And if you have questions, feel free to kind of write them down. And then after all our panelists speak, you can throw up in chat or unmute yourself, and we'd be happy to go into more detail. Our next panelist is—
put questions in the chat. Well, sorry, Gavin. You can just put them in the chat as well.
Yeah, totally. Nancy, you're up next.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I am a graduate student. I'm a second year MA PhD student, and I'm currently working on my thesis, and I have a couple of other projects that I'm working on. So I'll just talk a little bit about my approach to what I look for in an RA, and a little bit of how I approach research with my RA. So some of the qualities that I look for in RA, I know that sometimes I've heard a lot of the times, kind of like echoing what Jen said, we really want that practical application, or that's what undergraduate students are really seeking, right? To really connect the theory that we talk and we learn about so much in these classes. And they really, a lot of the times I hear the undergraduate students saying, I want to be able to see that, right, in a real life setting. And I think that what Jen said really speaks to what we do, right, where we see that real life data. We see these either survey responses, experimental, if we do an experiment, we see that, or qualitative data, and we're working with that. So it's really nice for the students because they really benefit from that. Again, kind of going outside of that classroom setting. So one of the things that I really look for in RAs is that commitment to the RA positions, just like you would for any kind of class, right? So being responsible, being solution oriented, taking initiative, these are all qualities that are very beneficial for RA positions, especially because sometimes you get asked to come back, right? If like you do really well, the quality of the work that you're producing is really beneficial to the team, then you get asked to come back. And again, if you really like it, this is a great opportunity because like Jen Gibbs also said, you build that rapport, right? Not only with the graduate student, but also with the the graduate student advisor who is overseeing the research projects. And really, I really like to think of these RA positions as something that is beneficial to me as a graduate student because I get to teach the undergrads, right? And I really do like to focus whenever I talk to my RAs, I always ask like, what do you want to get out of this experience, right? Because it's not only about how you can help my research, but also how can you grow? And a lot of the times my students will express interest in graduate school or some sort of research positions in like marketing, firms, which of course it's outside of like academia, but still beneficial, the research position. And I really try to create an environment where they can learn, right? So if they want to analyze data or if they want to clean data because that'll be beneficial for them in the long run, then we'll go ahead and we'll work with that. And again, everything is like a teaching opportunity. Sometimes my RAs will ask me questions about stats and we're not necessarily working with stats, we're probably just coding data, but I go back and I'm like, okay, so let's talk about this in a way that you can understand it, right? Because it's all about understanding research and again, a learning experience for you. So again, it varies by project. I've worked on a couple of projects. So right now I'm working on my MA thesis. I have coders, so we've done a lot of training with that. And if you've ever like heard about like content analyzing data, it can be really challenging, and it can also be one of those things that even if theory is guiding it, you really want to make it as objective as possible with like humans. So we need a lot of that feedback right from the coder. So there's a lot of input on how we even approach like the code book or the coding, which is really nice because then you get to, as an undergraduate student, you get to really provide input on this research project, right? I also like I keep calling Jen, but like Dr. Gibbs has said, it's also one of those opportunities where I've done a qualitative study where it's all very exploratory, and it's one of those things where you're just like letting the data speak to you and you immerse yourself in that, and again, these themes are emerging and you really have that opportunity to again see things that for example, as a media scholar, maybe I'm not seeing something that is like, more like within one of these other realms, right? Like the areas interpersonal or org. And I really like to push my students to like go beyond what I like, right? Because that's again a different perspective that they're bringing, and I value like the diversity that like Gavin said in all aspects. So like opinions and input and insight. So it's really great to work with RAs in that sense, because again, it varies by project, but it really does allow students to not only build that rapport, but also really take control of that learning opportunity and that learning experience for themselves, right? And then also, I really think that RA positions are really beneficial if you are trying to even figure out if graduate school is for you, right? Like if you're just like, you know what, I think I want to go for an MA, but I'm not really sure. Well, guess what? Like this is probably what you're going to be doing in a graduate program. So it kind of gives you a little like it gives you a tiny taste of what you'll experience as a graduate student. And then even like if you have any interest in like research outside of academia, in like what we call industry, right? Like I think it also does allow you to see how different like people, even like graduate students, how they approach research versus like how their advisors, and they're the ones that are most knowledgeable, right? But you can also see like how we're learning. I think it's a great opportunity, again, if you are seeking like higher education, or if you are thinking of any kind of job that will require some sort of research. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of like how I approach RA positions, and the teaching, the learning that goes with it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nancy. And I can even just echo that. Like the RAs that I work with currently, in terms of doing some coding, some content analysis for a dissertation work, even though we aren't doing interviews in this project, my RAs have expressed that they want to learn how to do interviews and how to develop an interview protocol. And so we've been taking some time to work on that. So it is really a win-win situation in terms of you guys are helping us do research, and coming up with better ideas, more robust analysis, and we're doing what we can to help facilitate your professional development based on whatever you're interested in. Our next panelist is Alyssa. She's going to be talking about just her real life experience at being an RA and some of the types of work that she's been able to accomplish.
Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. Sounds good. So I'm a 4th year comm major. I'm also a TMP certificate recipient. So that's just a little bit about my background. I've been working with Professor Jennifer Kam and Monica Cornejo for the last 3 quarters. My research involved working with undocumented students to learn more about their experiences with mental health resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic. And by mental health resilience, what I mean is how people experience stressors and how can they adapt and manage those stressors. So one of our biggest goals was to learn like what were the significant stressors and what can we do to help and create resources for undocumented students. So why is this important? So often the undocumented student population gets overlooked and a lot of people forget that they're a part of the community. So for example, they experience stressors specifically to being undocumented. Like they can't really apply for FAFSA or any type of governmental assistance. So that like brings up their levels of stress. And especially with COVID-19, I think that they're just facing a lot more stressors than like a typical student would face. So it's important to ask these questions in order to create resources specifically for them and just to make the UC system more inclusive and broader, and more appealing to the broader population, including undocumented students. So just to give you some idea of my responsibilities, so I conducted one-on-one interviews with undocumented students from various UC campuses. I also helped develop and adjust the protocol. And like others have mentioned already, that's just the interview process, the questions that we actually ask the participants. And most recently, I've been transcribing those conversations. And I think spring quarter, we're going to start analyzing that data. So it's been really cool seeing that whole process from start to finish, from summer of 2020 to now that we're developing the resources. It's just really cool to see how that entire process happens. So how did I find out about the RA-ship? I think it was the last week of spring quarter 2020. Monica actually sent out an email to the comm undergraduate students. And I went ahead and reached out. I just had to fill out a Google document. I interviewed with her. And I think 2 weeks later, I was on the team. So it was a very quick process just because it was time sensitive, because we wanted to put out these resources as soon as possible. So let's talk about the training. I mentioned that in 2 weeks, I was on board. So because we're working with a vulnerable population, I had to do the IRB preliminary training, and that took about 2 days. It was about 6 hours total. It was really long, but very doable. Additionally,
really quick, sorry, Alyssa, do you think you could explain what IRB is to folks that might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, so the IRB is the Institutional Review Board. It's something that I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think every research team has to go through in order to conduct research with vulnerable populations, just to ensure the privacy of the participants and ensure that like the policies. Is that correct?
Yeah, Yeah, so IRB approval is required anytime that you're working with human subjects. And so typically that's a big part of qualitative research. And it's, you want to be able to get familiar with ethics so that you're interacting with your participants in a way that's going to be beneficial to both parties. Sorry, I didn't want to totally interrupt what you were saying, Alyssa, but just to help folks understand.
No worries, thank you. So additionally, after the IRB training, we had 5 to 6 weeks of training for the actual interviews. So that included me working on the protocol with other RA members. We interviewed each other, and that took about 3 weeks. And then the additional 3 weeks, we would have mock interviews with like our friends or people that were interested in being a part of the study, but were not actually a part of the actual study. So like, how does this contribute to your personal and professional growth? Well, I can tell you something. So before I was working with Monica and Jennifer, I actually was working with Yuri Yang and Dr. Stolf in the comm department. And they exposed me to this concept called CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. And I actually did research with them for a quarter. And this is something that I had no idea was even an up and coming field. And it just has to do with the sustainability of a business model for any given corporation. And that's something that like I was really interested in after research, and it's something that I pursued eventually. And I actually had that on my resume and my cover letter, and it got me an opportunity with a startup to work on their CSR with them. So I think that was like a great example of how an RA-ship can help you professionally. Additionally, the work that I'm doing right now, it's more of a personal project. It was a humanitarian project. I knew that coming into UCSB, I wanted to work with underrepresented groups, specifically undocumented immigrants. My dad was undocumented when he came to the United States, and I saw how difficult it was for him. So I think I specifically wanted to seek out opportunities that helped undocumented or underrepresented groups. And yeah, and some other things that I learned during my process was, I think that just echoing off of what the other panelists already said, I did get a lot closer to faculty members. I felt really comfortable asking them for leadership positions, or if I wanted to decrease the workload or increase my workload, or if I wanted to focus on a specific part of the research. Like for instance, I'm very interested in analysis. Okay, so they're going to put me on an analysis team, not a transcribing team. So I was very comfortable with them now, and I still am very comfortable with them. And that can lead to a number of opportunities. Also, I really learned how to work remotely with a team. I think that was immensely helpful, because now that I go out into the job market, I can now tell them I know how to work on a team. I've done XYZ, and I know how to manage my time and also be collaborative and still a part of the team. Also, I'm super comfortable interviewing now. Even when someone is interviewing me, I feel very comfortable talking to people. And it just helps me immensely when you're applying to jobs after college. And me, especially being a senior, I have a lot of interviews lined up already. And it's just made me a lot more comfortable and a lot, I think I understand what they're looking for now that I've been on the other end. And yeah, so that's pretty much how my experience. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Alyssa, and thank you for all the important work that you're doing with undocumented students. That is, that's making a huge impact. Our final panelist is Anna Ingle, and she's going to talk more about her experiences being an RA and working with Chantel.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a fourth year comm major. I'd heard about research opportunities and people doing research at UCSB before I transferred here, but because I was a transfer, I felt like these opportunities seemed too far out of reach, or maybe I came in a little too late to get a research position. But even though I was super interested in one, but after using my fall quarter to adjust to higher education system and find my footing, and also really get more in depth in the comm department and kind of figure out what I was really doing there, I felt more confident in my ability to adequately perform as a research assistant. But I was still tentative to seek out the opportunity, but during the winter quarter, I was in a education course, and there was many firsthand experiences of previous transfer students participating in research. And while I was in that class, my TA was who TAs are generally grad students who are doing their own research. She was talking about a couple of her projects, and one of them sounded like super interesting to me because they combined a multitude of my like interests within communication. So I just decided to build up the courage and go up to her after class one day and like let her know, like inform her of my interest in her project. And I honestly, the more she talked about it, the more I really wanted to do it. So I became super insistent, and like every week would remind her, when I saw her, would remind her that I was interested, and even followed up with an email about it after the class had ended. So she eventually agreed to let me work with her. And so I started working with her last spring quarter, and I began assisting her on the project that I wanted to, and immediately found my it was my passion for communication research. And since then I've progressed from like just the newest like research assistant to the executive research assistant, where like I run a couple of the projects and I manage the other research assistants that are working on these projects as well, which is super fulfilling and like also really good experience. Obviously, this didn't happen overnight. Before I could even begin to assist Chantel with her research, I had to complete the research ethics training course through the IRB as well, just like Alyssa did. And then I had to meet with Chantel and the other RAs to be trained for specific study procedures, which like also was interviewing. So we would also interview each other. I would have like to practice on my friends, and that gave me about a week to get like ready for my first ever interview. And my first ever interview was like, obviously didn't go perfect, but you learn eventually. And also I like quickly got the hang of it due to the effort Chantel puts into like proper beneficial training in accordance to the project at hand. So the project that I began working on looked into intergenerational communication about mental health within families, and we examined the effect of conversations about mental health between a student and a legal guardian or parent on their attitudes surrounding mental health. So these family members take a survey about mental health and their attitudes towards and surrounding mental health stigmas before and after joining me over Zoom for a 15-minute mediated conversation with prompted questions in regards to mental health in their own lives, such as like mental health in their family, their like culture, community, and like the US in general. And this project became very near and dear to my heart, and mediating these conversations was extremely fulfilling. And I ended up making like I ended up learning a lot from like the families themselves and feeling like fulfilled after like helping to facilitate these conversations, which I agree, like I think are extremely important. But now I'm assisting with Chantel's study on COVID's effect on minorities' mental health. Since COVID-19 has hit like racial and ethnic minority groups harder than white Americans, with higher risk for death and infection plus major job loss. So living through these events can have an effect on people's mental health, both positively and negatively. So we're interested in hearing about people of color's thoughts and experiences with mental health over the past year and how these combined stressors have affected them. But working on all of these projects this past year has greatly contributed to my academic and personal growth. My understanding of communication theories and concepts and practice has expanded, which improved my writing and performance in my communication courses immensely, and also just like understanding communication in the field in general and like kind of where I want to go with it. And mediating these conversations between families has helped me in my own communication within my own relationships, especially those that are familial. And due to the fact that I enjoy conducting and assisting with research so much, I now plan on continuing to do so while working towards my master's or PhD in graduate school, which like I'd toyed with the idea before, but like this like really solidified it. And like now I know what I want to do when I go. So I definitely highly recommend pursuing an opportunity as a research assistant to anyone who's even slightly interested. Even if you don't love it, you'll know that you don't love it and you don't want to go like towards that side of like the communication field, but you also would still learn so much about communication and the route you wish to go with the subject through your experience, as well as improve upon your research and communication skills, all while adding to your course credits and your resume. So there's like really no downside to it, I think. And I obviously like love what I do. So
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Anna, and thanks for the important work that you're doing, especially in light of the pandemic with minority groups. I do want to echo, there's kind of a gulf of experience that you're having as an undergraduate and what you think grad school might be like. And it is very much the case, just to kind of echo what you're saying, Anna, is getting hands-on experience with research, I think is one of the best ways to fill out if grad school is right for you, as well as to get a good feeling of what types of jobs you would like to do when you graduate. And you can develop those skill sets while getting that hands-on experience. So we're going to transition into Q&A, and you can throw up questions in the chat, or if you would like to ask the questions over Zoom, you can just do the raise your hand emoji and I'll call on you. So what questions do you have about RAships or research or anything we've talked about today?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My question was, so I just applied for a media skills lab RAship over like a Google Doc form, and it asked me for research experience, like a list of research experience, but I've never done research here at UCSB, so I didn't really have anything to give them. And I was wondering if you're aware of any opportunities that don't require previous research, just previous research experience, just because I've never done it before.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're going to be talking about at the end after Q&A, where I'm going to be showcasing some graduate students that need to have RAs to work on projects. And, oftentimes, and I'll let our panelists weigh in, but often with the RAships in our department, we're willing just to meet you where you're at. Like, we're not really looking for necessarily prior expertise. We're wanting to give you that training. Other panelists, did you want to kind of weigh in on research for folks that maybe don't have experience?
Yeah, I can weigh in on that. So you definitely don't need to have prior experience to be an RA. I think there's a range of how structured different research teams are. So if you were applying to the Media Skills Lab and they have a form, that might be on the more structured side, and they, it's not that they necessarily will only take people with experience, but maybe they just want to see what kind of background someone has. And if they do have a choice, that might, impact their decision. A lot of faculty members just kind of research. You can definitely reach to them, inquire, as well as grad students too. So, there are a lot of needs, and I think that's another important question is how do you get an RAship? And there's sort of a whole range of ways. Thing is to reach out. The best thing is to familiarize yourself with different research projects that are going on. So you can look at, faculty websites, look to see what projects they have going on. Try to read up about them a little bit, or at least have some idea, and then you'll be more informed when you approach the faculty member. You're welcome to just contact people. Hey, do you need an RA for next quarter? I've seen that there are better and worse ways to ask. So sometimes I get students who just are kind of frantic at the last minute, or they didn't really do their homework, and it's do you need an RA? And they don't really know what they're just I'm just shopping around, and I'm just anyone me, I'll do. That's not really the best way to ask. It usually is better know something about the project. So sometimes I'll get students who say, oh, I saw that you're doing this project on online communities, and my interests are in technology and organizations, and maybe I had this experience that's relevant. I think if you are more informed about it, you're much more likely to to be successful. And so a lot of faculty, it's not that they expect you to have any particular background or research experience. just like getting a job, if you do your homework and the more informed you are about what the person does, what kind of research, and if you can show how it connects to your interests, even in a very basic way, I think that, you know, you're more likely to be successful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
Hi, Professor. I have a question. My question is like, to be an RA, whether I should like to personally contact to one professor, or do I have some like website that they're hiring and I just go to an interview, something like that?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't really have like a centralized process for RA-ships. You know, some faculty, you know, have more of a system than others, but I think the best thing is to really research, you know, several faculty members or grad students and kind of maybe a few people that you might be interested in working with, and then just reach out to them. And you know, they may say no. Don't take it personally. Say no. Sometimes it just depends. Maybe they don't need any RAs that quarter, but I would just try to reach out to several different people and see who needs, you know, chances are somebody will need you. Yeah, there isn't really like a central repository where you can apply.
I'm
There
sorry.
is paperwork that you
There's
have to fill
Can I
out.
just
but-
say-
Thank you.
the FRAP website.
Sorry, yeah, the FRAP website.
Yeah.
That's centralized.
There's like a
There
list
is a
of
website now.
Yeah, there's been a website for at least the last 3 years. But you can go on this web, if you just type in UCSB FRAP on Google, it should come up. It's just a directory of like faculty members that need RAs. You can filter it by major, and also to answer the previous student's question, you can also filter out the type of experience they need. So if they need a little bit more technical experience, they'll have it on there and they'll put it in their listing. Or if they're just looking for like no experience at all, you can go ahead and filter it. But FRAP is like the most centralized system that UCSB offers, I believe.
Yeah,
I'll
and
just
Brad,
think all faculty members know about that, because like all the RAs that I've ever gotten have like contacted me directly. I've never gone through that site before.
yeah, FRAP is campus wide, and so you'll see postings across all departments. But you're totally right, Dr. Gibbs, is that, you know, a lot of faculty members maybe aren't utilizing that resource, and so don't feel discouraged if there's a faculty member that you feel like you have a really good bond with, or you're really interested in the research they're doing. Even if they don't post on FRAP, just reach out to them directly. And we are trying to get to a better centralized system, but that's something that's kind of still in the works in terms of just from our department's perspective.
Sure.
And then,
Sorry.
yeah, no, you can go ahead and
I would,
weigh in, Anna.
because I know for a lot of students it might be daunting to reach out to the professor themselves, but most grad students who, like, your TAs are all grad students, so most of them are working on their own research or like assisting on research of some sort. So if it's more comfortable to like go to their office hours or reach out to them and email them, you can also go through your TA.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to piggyback off of that, like I know, like I'm looking for an RA for my advisor, Dana Mastro. So, you know, I'm the one doing all the interviewing. So I think that the suggestion that Anna just provided is really helpful. Also, the undergraduate advising office, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gavin, but they'll also be sending out emails as opportunities arise.
Yeah, definitely. And then I also think that we're trying to get more in the habit of, at least I know graduate students are designing flyers for different research projects that they have in which they would need RAs. And so we're also finding ways to disseminate that to the department too. And what's also kind of, I mean, this is a shameless plug. I mean, our event tonight, this is an information session for RA-ships. We typically haven't done an information session, but we want to start doing a quarterly information session just to help explain what being an RA-ship, what being an RA is like, as well as to highlight RA-ship opportunities. So I think we have time for a couple more questions. Yeah. Paloma, I'm
Oh, yeah, it's
sorry.
okay. No problem. I have a question actually for the RAs. If you can tell me an obstacle that you have experienced being an RA and how you overcame this obstacle and achieve academic or personal growth. I can copy and paste if you want.
I would say one of the obstacles is finding the time to incorporate your research into your workload, like your school workload, because like they're at the same priority level in my opinion. So it's like hard to like differentiate like what you're supposed to be doing first, because like with the research, it's like someone else is depending on you, whereas like your schoolwork is like that's like all on you and it's all for you kind of thing. So that was kind of difficult, but like once you get the hang of like allocating your time and like figuring out like a good system that works for you, that's, and like honestly that's super helpful like all around in life in general. So like time allocation and like more so doing things the way other people want you to do them too, and on time for like those. And with research also, it's not like, oh, you have a specific deadline like you would with school. It's like you have to be on top of yourself, and like you have to be on top, like checking, like I have to check my email like all the time to see if like anyone signs up for the like to participate in the study, and then take that person, and like then so it's like it's kind of like a constant job. It is a job, I would say. So that's, and so I think it does prepare you for like the professional field, whether you're going to grad school or just going straight to work, I would say.
Definitely, I would agree with her. It is it's kind of difficult to manage time with your other classes. Another challenge that I faced in the research that I participated in is that we are dealing with a vulnerable population. So they bring a lot of their stressors into their interviews, and it sometimes can be daunting on the interviewer. And I think this is something that I mentioned to Jennifer and Monica, like you actually absorb like the stress and like the pain that they're feeling, and it sometimes can be overwhelming. So in order to overcome this, I think that we just had a lot more group meetings just to debrief. And then we actually made our own coping mechanisms to kind of manage that stress. And may be able to move forward with it. It is difficult when someone is crying on the phone with you and you can't really do anything about it. So I think that's something also, if you're working with actual people, that's something that you might experience. And if you're like a really sensitive person, I know that it can be kind of difficult to manage like that stress. But in order to overcome that, you have to compartmentalize and build strategies to help you de-stress. And I think that can be applied to many levels of life. Like I think I've applied these like coping mechanisms to like my own personal life. And I think that definitely helped me like grow as a person and also professionally.
Awesome, thank you guys. We have time for like one last question, and then we'll talk about some RAship opportunities coming up next quarter.
Yeah, I had a question. So if you're a communication major and let's say you have, you got an RAship with a professor in a different department, are you able to, I guess, get units for Comm 99/199, or is that not possible?
Yes, at least on my team, we had other RAs that weren't in the comm department. They were like in political science. I think we had like a philosophy major, and they all got credit for 199, or I'm sorry, 99 RA. I think they just got, actually, I think they did get 199 RA. So they got comm units, and it wasn't for their major, but it was towards units to graduate. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, like it might be up to the department how those units transfer and what those units count towards. So in our department, Comm 199 units are counted as like upper division elective credits, basically. I'm not sure if you could do an RAship in a different department and substitute the upper elective requirements, but you might find ways that it might fulfill credits for your gen ed. I think the best way to do that would be if you were really connecting to a faculty member in a different department and you want to be their RA, follow up with the undergraduate advising office and get some specifics of how those credits are going to help you make progress in finishing your degree.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk about some RA-ship opportunities coming up in the spring. And thanks so much. Nancy is actually one of the people who's been coordinating and getting these opportunities from other grad students and putting together this visual aid, and I really appreciate that. So Iwan Kim, she needs 1 to 2 RAs. She's doing some research about online communication. Some of the tasks that she's looking for an RA to do is some data coding, transcribing interviews, and conducting literature reviews. Looking for 1 to 2 units for an RA-ship, but her research is a little bit unique because she's looking for RAs that have Korean language proficiency. So I know that that might not apply to everybody, but this is, you know, a little bit more, the scope is a little bit more narrow for this project. Another research opportunity is with Nitan Navik, and she needs 2 RAs. She's going to be conducting focus groups with students to examine boundary management during COVID. And so this is really exciting cutting edge research because it's dealing with some pandemic issues. And some of the tasks that her RAs will be doing is recruiting and managing research participants, doing data coding, and transcribing interviews. And she has flexibility for how many units of an RA-ship that she wants to take on. And I'll just briefly explain that because I know we didn't explain that as much in the panelists. But when you do an RA-ship through the department, if you want to get units for it, we have a sliding scale of 1 to 4 units that you can take. And you'll want to talk to whoever you're working with to see how many units worth of work is available. To give you a perspective, 4 units, which is the maximum amount of units you can do in an RA-ship, you're expected to devote 10 hours per week of work at that opportunity. But many of us can be flexible and offer you lower units if you want to still get involved in research, but maybe you can't commit to the full 10 hours. Some other research opportunities in digital media. Gwen Petro, she needs 1 to 2 RAs on a research project looking at digital media and content curation. And her RAs will do data coding, do some statistical analysis of data, as well as conduct literature reviews. And Nan Wilkenfeld needs 3 to 4 RAs to work on a research project with human chatbot relationships and how this connects to organizations and technology. And that's a really cutting edge project looking at AI interaction. I've kind of seen some of the work that she's done in this area, and it is really interesting. Some of her RAs, the tasks that they'll do involve data coding, transcribing interviews, and conducting literature reviews. The units are flexible, but she is looking for RAs. You don't have to have this, but it would be helpful if you know Python coding or you're tech savvy, or maybe you want to develop those skills. And then for our last RA-ship opportunities, both of these are working with Nancy. And since Nancy is one of our panelists, I figured that she could actually just talk through these opportunities and what she's looking for. Sorry, Nancy, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. So I am looking for 1 RA in terms of coding self-responses, adjectives describing news stories. And for this opportunity, we're really seeking someone who can commit to 10 hours, which is 4 units. And we're also needing someone who is Spanish language proficient. And for the second project, I'll need 2 RAs for this one, and we're looking at celebrity political expression on social media. So what I'm hoping that the RAs can help with are collecting social media posts on Facebook. And for that, you will be required, if you're interested in just committing to 2 units, which is about 5 hours a week. And yeah, feel free to contact me if you are interested in either one of these opportunities. Of course, the one on the left-hand side does require that Spanish language proficiency, but the other one's a little bit more flexible. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nancy. And I'll be working with the undergraduate advising office to not only get this video posted on the website, but those slides as well, in case you want to go back and reference them. That is all that we've kind of prepared to cover today. This closes out our first RA-ship information session. I just want to say, I think that I speak for all the panelists when I say that we're passionate about research, we're passionate about getting you connected. And so if there's anything that you wanted to talk about today, but maybe you don't feel comfortable bringing up in a group setting, just feel free to email us and we'd be happy to talk to you more about some of this stuff. And keep an eye out for the next quarterly RA panel, which will be happening at some point next quarter. But thank you guys so much. Thank you to our panelists. We'll do some golf claps for them. Yeah, awesome. And I hope that you guys all have a great night. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gavin, for organizing this.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin.
Yeah, thanks, guys.